name, and who could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I met you. I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I tried to hide. It was my tomb till I met you. You called my name, then I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, then I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Now your mercy save my soul, and your freedom is all that I know. The old man knew, the old man knew Jesus when I met you. Today you called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name when I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. About how Jesus came and saved us and adopted us into his family. I needed rescue, my sin was heavy. The chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan, but you called me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healer. Now your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open, 'cause when you call my name, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, come on. Out of the darkness into your glorious day.
SMCC exists to help as many people as possible become fully devoted and fully delighted followers of Jesus Christ. Part of that delight is knowing that our true joy does not come from things that fade, but it comes from a Savior who never will.
This is the day you made, so I'll rejoice and be glad, rejoice and be glad in it. This is
Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaken. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus, 'cause he's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would he fail now? He won't. He won't. I've still got joy in chaos. I've got peace that makes no sense. So I won't be going under. I'm not held by my own strength, 'cause I build my life on Jesus. 'Cause he's never let me down. He's faithful in every season. So why would he fail now? He won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. He won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaken. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus, 'cause he's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would he fail now? He won't. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail.
When everything around us is shaken, when life brings insecurity, we can be firm and we can stand strong in Christ because he is unwavering and he is always faithful.
Rain came, wind blew, but my house was built on you. I'm safe with you, and I'm gonna make it through. Rain came, wind blew, but my house was built on you. I'm safe with you, and I'm gonna make it. Rain came and wind blew. Rain came,
God, we just come to you this morning just to thank you for this chance to come together, Lord, in corporate worship and just sing those truths about you, God, that we can build our house on your firm foundation. And when the rains come and the winds blow, Lord, it will not fall. God, we just pray that you would speak in this place this morning. God, that someone here would receive the message you have for them. God, we thank you again for this chance to come together and just be in your presence. It's in your name we pray. Amen. You guys can be seated.
Well, good morning, good morning. If we haven't met, my name is Matt Gonzalez. I run the student ministry here at SMCC Lehigh. One of our values here is that you can belong before you believe. So if this is your first time or you're relatively new here, we are so happy that you chose to spend your morning with us. And if you're thinking about what your next steps might be, if you look in the seat in front of you or that QR code on screen, you'll see a welcome card. This is a way for us to connect with you. You could fill it out, give us some of your information, and the goal here is that in looking into your next steps, we can help you along in that process. You can learn more about what we do here and how you can move forward in that. So we'd love if you can fill that out and drop it off. At the back, we have a black drop box. You can leave it there. Or in the lobby, there is a green table. You can just leave it there as well, and we will be in contact with you. And speaking of next steps, baptisms are coming up, and this one is a really cool one. So all of our campuses are coming together at the Draper Pool, and we are doing our outdoor baptisms. And baptism is awesome. This is a great way for all of us to celebrate and witness this decision that people make. And if that is something that you are thinking about doing, maybe it's something you are set on, maybe this slide just sparks something in your brain. Any questions you have on that, the first step towards that is attending our baptism orientation. And lucky for you, that is happening today after service. So directly after service, there's an office room just at the end of this hallway out of the sanctuary, and we will be meeting there. You can ask all of your questions and just see what baptism is all about and make that decision. So with that, I want to invite Trevor up on stage, and he's going to deliver an excellent message.
All right. Well, man, it has been a minute since I've had the chance to be with you all in this capacity. If we haven't met, my name's Trevor. I serve as the campus pastor at this particular campus at the SMCC Lehigh campus. And past couple of weeks, I've had the chance to hang out with some of the other teams. So 2 weeks ago, I was hanging out in the children's ministry and got to see what that was all about, and it was so much fun. And then last week was playing in the band, which was also so much fun. Both of them were, they were just Jeff and May, the two people who lead those two teams, are doing such a fantastic job. And there's so much good and really wonderful things happening within those ministries. And so all that to say, it was fun for me to try some new things. And if you're not serving anywhere on a team, I guess what I want to say is you're missing out. There's a lot of fun to be had, and it's a great way to kind of build relationships too, and a sense of community. So, okay, with that, I want to go ahead and get into our discussion for today. This is a student ministry Sunday, a Sunday where basically across all of our campuses, we are focused on student ministry in particular. So with that, this is the idea that I want to kick off our conversation with. Churches that fail to prioritize youth will fail to have a future. Churches that fail to, be able to communicate with, to make sense to appeal to, even churches that fail to help young people have a sense of belonging there and a sense of purpose there, those churches will inevitably lose a sense of passion, lose a sense of direction, begin to shrink, and eventually begin to die. Now, granted, it will be a clean, you could say even a squeaky clean and a peaceful and a very quiet death, but it will be a death nonetheless. And so today, one of the things that we're taking time to discuss, one Sunday out of the year, is what does it look like for us as a community to prioritize youth here? And today, the focus is even further, not just youth broadly, but even in particular, our teenagers, our student ministry? What does it look like for us to prioritize people within that phase of life today? Now, that's what I want to talk about. Now, with that, some of you, the shows that are kind of the favorites on your watch list, Outer Banks, Wednesday, if that's where you like to hang out, you're probably like, man, I love youth culture. I'm down for this. I'm ready for this conversation. If you don't know what Wednesday and Outer Banks are, you're probably like, do we really need to spend a Sunday doing this? Do we actually have to talk about this? And let me just say that while the focus is on student ministry, I think the truth is that there will be stuff for us all to glean from this conversation that'll be beneficial walking away from it. But to get there, I want to go ahead and jump into the conversation. So with that, what I want to do is open up by looking at 3 different passages that tell us a little bit about what it looked like for Jesus when he engaged with those who were in this particular phase of life, those who were students, those who were teenagers. First one's right here, Mark chapter 3. If you got a Bible or one on your phone, you're welcome to join me, but also we'll have the passages up on the screen, so you can follow along that way as well. So Mark chapter 3, verses 13 to 18 reads like this. It says, Jesus went up on a mountainside and called to him those he wanted, and they came to him. He appointed 12 that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach and to have authority to drive out demons. These are the 12 he appointed. Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. To them he gave the name Boanerges, which means sons of thunder, kind of a sweet nickname. Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. All right, so obviously there's a lot within this little passage that we could spend some time unpacking, but for the purposes of our conversation today, I think the thing that is most worth noting here is that Jesus, at this point, kind of the beginning of his ministry, had a lot of people who were interested in him, a lot of people who were following him, a lot of people who were chomping at the bit to receive this opportunity that he extends in this moment to these 12 individuals, to sort of be in the closest circle with him, those that he poured into, who were with him day in and day out throughout his ministry, his students. And yet he intentionally chooses these 12 individuals. And when you break down kind of what we can know about the cultural information of the day, chances are several of these, if not the majority of these individuals, were teenagers. That most of them were probably teenage boys. And here's how we know that, right? First off, within Jewish culture, rabbis typically would enter into their ministry as a rabbi around the age of 30. And the Gospel of Luke, one of the New Testament books, actually tells us that's how old Jesus was when he began his teaching ministry. And so he's 30. It's highly unlikely that any of them would have been older than him. So they're in their 20s or their teens. That's likely where they're at age-wise, right? But even beyond that, several times Jesus is recorded as referring to them as little children. It's kind of like when I refer to teenagers as the young folk. That's a way of basically, acknowledging that there's a broader age gap here that's present. And so when Jesus is calling them little children, when he's calling them young folk, that's an indication that they're not just a few years younger than him, that there's a broader age gap at play here. And even beyond that, when we take into consideration sort of the religious education of Jewish boys in the first century, it typically began at the age of 5 and would continue until they were about 12 or 13 for everyone. But at that point, if there was an interest, if there was a desire, if family circumstances allowed, that would be when they would go to seek a rabbi to study under, to be a student under, to be a disciple of. And so discipleships like this often began in the teenage years. And so what all of this tells us is that it is highly likely that what Jesus is doing here when he selects these 12 is he's choosing intentionally to invest in teenagers. That Jesus chose to invest in teenagers, right? Which is, I think, just the first bit of our conversation that perhaps, raises the level of awareness that, if Jesus is choosing specifically to invest, to pour the vast majority of his time, energy, and attention into these 12 who are in that phase of life, I think there's something to be gleaned from that. But let's continue the conversation. Second passage I want to look at just a little bit later in the same book, Mark chapter 8. And this is what Mark tells us about Jesus and his teenage disciples in Mark chapter 8. This is what we read. Mark 18, 17 to 21. Aware of their discussion, Jesus asked them, "Why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not see or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes but fail to see and ears but fail to hear? And don't you remember. All right, so quick context. What's happening here is Jesus has just warned them about the teaching of the religious leaders of the day. But he did so using a metaphor. He said, watch out for the yeast of the Pharisees and of Herod, a political leader, right? So watch out for the yeast. He's using a bread metaphor. But the disciples don't get it. And they're all huddled up together trying to figure out, trying to make sense, trying to solve the puzzle. And what their conclusion is that they arrive at is that they don't have any bread. And that's what he's warning them about. We don't have bread. That's the problem. And so this is basically Jesus expressing frustration, saying, how do you not get it? And also, how do you think that this is the problem? He's saying, don't you remember the things that have just happened that you saw with your own eyes? He says, when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, how many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up? 12, they replied. This is in reference to an account where Jesus takes 5 loaves of bread, multiplies them, feeds 5,000 people, and on the other side of that, there's 12 basketfuls of bread left over. But that's not the only occasion. There's also this other one that he references, verse 20. And when I broke the 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up? They answered 7, right? So he said to them, you can almost imagine this gap. He's doing this Q&A. He's kind of leading them along. And at this point, they answer 7. And he's waiting for them to draw the conclusion that clearly a lack of bread is not the problem here, that's not what I'm talking about. And he says to them in the end, do you still not understand? And so, all that to say, Jesus was frustrated with teenagers. He loved them. He chose to invest in them. He poured into them perhaps more than anyone else, but also Jesus was frustrated with teenagers. Now, I want to say, not more than he was frustrated with anyone else, but the record does show that this existed within his interactions with them. And I got to say, over the past 6 or 7 months, I've had the chance to hang out with the student ministry here more. And, you enter into that with a desire to connect with the students, to develop relationships with them, to have an enjoyable relationship with them and enjoyable interactions. And let me just say that that desire to connect can put you into a vulnerable position. It can put you into a dangerous position, because ultimately what it led to for me is one Tuesday night, I find myself lined up with the other leaders waiting something called this ice bucket challenge, where I'm about to get a bucket of cold water poured on me over my head, all so that I can connect with these teenagers. No one else in my life requires things like that of me in order for us to have a relationship. But for some reason, that's at play when it comes to students and to teenagers. Okay, so that's the second one. Third passage, Matthew 28, 16 to 20. This is the very end of the Gospel of Matthew. If you're here week in and week out, this is probably one of the passages that you're more familiar with, that you've seen more often, because it's such a significant passage throughout the entire New Testament. So it's one that we reference a lot. But within it, I think within the context of this conversation, there's something different to be gleaned from it than what we usually go to it for. So Matthew 28, verses 16 to 20 reads like this. It says, then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, right? This is on the other side of Jesus' death and resurrection. And so there's 11 of them now. Judas is no longer with them. There's 11, and they go up to Galilee, the region in the north of Israel, because Jesus had told them to go. Like 2 paragraphs earlier, he tells them to go to Galilee. And it says this, verse 17, when they saw him there, they worshiped him. But some doubted. And I think this is interesting. They worshiped him. Now, in first century Jewish culture, or in Jewish culture at any time for that matter, to worship someone is not something that just happens or is even okay. In the first century, this is something that was punished by death because it was considered blasphemy. And so if they are worshiping him, that's something to take note of. They are recognizing that he is more than just a man, more than just an impressive individual. They are acknowledging that he is God, and they're worshiping him as such. And yet you see, even in the midst of this, but some doubted. Some still have questions. Some still have things they're concerned with. Some still have some sort of loose ends that they're seeking to bring to resolution. And I think in light of that, you see what Jesus goes on to do after this. And I think what that's an indication of is that doubt is not the worst thing in the world. But that doubt, in the context of the spiritual life, can be an incredibly healthy thing. That doubt actually can lead us on a journey to truth. It's one of the reasons why here at SMCC we stress the idea that questions deserve answers, because doubt and questions are interrelated. And in order to allow doubt to lead us on a journey to truth, we have to actually voice our questions, to bring them into the context of community, and to seek out truth as an answer to the questions that we have. And you see that this doubt, it doesn't disqualify them, right? But instead, Jesus goes on to say this, verse 18. Then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, for this reason, go and make disciples. In the same way that I've poured into you over the past 3 years, I want you to pour in to others. I want you to teach the very same things that I taught you to them. Make disciples of all nations, of the entire world, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. All right, now, truth be told, this commission is almost like a baton that was handed first to Jesus to them, and from them to the next generation, and so on and so forth, until all of a sudden you and I find ourselves with the baton in our hands here in 21st century Lehigh, Utah, in Utah Valley. And so it's been passed down. But I think what's worth noting in light of this conversation is that at the very beginning, Jesus passes the baton to his disciples. He entrusts his ministry, his message, his church to teenagers. Jesus entrusted his church to teenagers, and probably a few of them who were just a little bit older than that, which I think is something significant for us to take note of, because sometimes one of the easiest assumptions for us to make, either as adults kind of looking at those in that stage of life, or even if you're a student, right? I know we've got a lot of students in the room. A lot of times the assumption that's easy to make is that the time in life in which I will make a significant contribution is later. Right? It's not going to happen within my teenage years. That essentially this is a time of preparation, this is a time to learn, this is a time to, basically get ready for when real life actually occurs. And that's when I can enter into things and make a significant contribution to this world and to even, the sense of what God is doing within it. That's the time when that occurs. It's easy to make that assumption. And yet I think when we look at the way that Jesus engaged with his disciples, one of the things we can see is that consistently throughout the biblical writings, teenagers, people in that phase of life, have made significant contributions to the shape of history and even what God is doing within it. All right, so we see that with the disciples, and even beyond that, if we just kind of run through the list of like biblical stories, right? If we just kind of hit a few of these. For example, King David, most significant king in the entire history of Israel. He is anointed to be the next king when he's barely a teenager. He might even be like a preteen, like 12 or 13, might even be 12 years old, maybe 13. And it's only a couple of years after that the nation of Israel is in war with the Philistines. And the Philistines' mightiest warrior, this giant named Goliath, is essentially mocking the entire army, even the king of Israel, and everyone's so terrified, no one will go out to fight him. But David, while he's just a teenage kid, goes out without even a piece of armor on, just a sling and a stone, and he destroys, he defeats, he kills Goliath, rescuing his people from the oppression of this foreign nation when he's just a teenager. Esther, another significant person we read about in the history of the people of Israel. She becomes the queen of Persia when she's a teenager, and then uses that position essentially to risk her life in order to stop the genocide of her people. She saves her entire people group by risking her life with the opportunity that was given to her as she becomes queen when she's just a teenager. And so remarkable. If you look at Josiah, he's often referred to as the boy king. He becomes king over Israel, or over actually the kingdom of Judah in the south. He becomes king when he's like 8 years old. And so the boy king. But when he's a teenager, the book of the law is discovered, which is the first 5 books of the Bible that kind of tell them how they're supposed to relate to God, how they're supposed to organize their society. And it had been lost, and everything had kind of fallen into disrepair. And basically, lines that were intended to be straight had become crooked, and they had no idea. And then all of a sudden, they realized, man, things are messed up when they discover this book. And so, as a teenager, he leads this entire reform of the complete kingdom in order to bring it back into alignment with the book of the law that was discovered when he's just a teenager. again, going forward, Daniel. Daniel is, essentially he was a teenager when the Babylonians came and destroyed the kingdom of Judah and hauled them off to exile. And so as a teenager, he gets hauled off to exile. He gets picked because he has potential, he's intelligent, he's been educated, he receives more education there. But then he and his 3 friends, they go on to defy the king's orders in an attempt to honor God. And as a result of it, they rise through the ranks until all of a sudden they are some of the most influential people in the entire kingdom, the entire empire that is Persia, when they're teenagers. And perhaps the most impressive one of them all is actually Mary, the mother of Jesus himself. She becomes the mother of God. She gives birth to God in human form when she's just a teenager, right? Just a teenage kid. And so when we just take a survey over the biblical stories, over what the biblical writings have to tell us about God at work throughout human history, one of the things we see is that in many different times, in many different places, God has chosen to work through those in this particular phase of life that so often it is so easy to assume is just a season of preparation for what comes next. And that's not to say that there's not an element of preparation involved within it. Absolutely there is, but I think what's worth acknowledging is that there is no age prerequisite when it comes to participating within the plans of God, when it comes to participating significantly in what God is bringing about now, today. That you don't have to wait till you have a high school diploma or you're in your 20s or you've got a ring and some kids. You don't have to wait for those things to be a part of what God is doing in the course of human history. And so I think in light of that, whether you have a teenager within your home or, maybe a kid who is fast on the track to becoming a teenager, I think the question that is worth considering is just this. What's your spiritual dream for your teenager? What's your spiritual dream for them in this season of their life? What are your hopes for them when it comes to the spiritual aspect of their life? I think so often it's so easy it's unconscious. Dreams just naturally leap out of us when it comes to the other aspects of their life, when it comes to academics, when it comes to athletics, when it comes to all of these different areas. A 3-year-old swings a bat and hits the ball off the tee successfully once, and all of a sudden we're dreaming about them playing for the Dodgers. That happens naturally, and it's fun, right? I'm not trying to throw shade on that, but I think it's worth considering when it comes to the spiritual aspect of their lives. Man, what are your dreams for them there? What are your hopes? What do you want to see happen within their life there, spiritually? Because through the entirety of their lives, that will be one of the most significant, one of the most important components of their life. And if you're a student in the room, I think it's worth even posing the question to you, right? You've probably got dreams about academics and athletics and social life, and maybe you're going to rise through the ranks and become the best Fortnite player in the world, whatever it is. But what's your spiritual dream for yourself? When you consider this aspect of your life, what do you want to see happen? What's your spiritual dream for this season of your life? Matt, who was up here hosting earlier, he leads our student ministry here at the Lehigh campus. And one of the things that Matt and I talk about regularly is just this idea. It's kind of crazy. Within a 7-mile radius of this room where we're sitting, within 7 miles of here, if you draw a circle around us, there's over 20,000 students in middle school and high school. Over 20,000 students spending the majority of their time in buildings that are less than 10 minutes away from where we are sitting here. And I think as a community whose desire is to reach as many people as possible, a community whose desire is to be in this valley and for this valley, I think the question is, man, how do we begin to reach those schools? How do we begin to reach some measure of those over 20,000 students who are in such proximity to where we are now, even in this moment? And I think the truth is, if we're going to begin to make a dent, if we're going to begin to to reach these schools, if we're going to begin to reach a significant portion of these students, it's not something that will happen through me. It's not something that will happen through the majority of us in this room. I don't think it's even something that necessarily happens through adults, right? I think it's something that happens through our students, through the people who are spending the vast majority of their lives right now in this season in these schools, surrounded by people who don't have an accurate understanding of who Jesus is, and even the love and the acceptance and the grace that he offers to them, and the purpose and the freedom that he offers to them. And so I think the question is, man, what does it look like for us to equip our students to see themselves as they're going into school, that this isn't just a place for academics, this isn't just a place for athletics, this isn't just a place for kind of the social life. All of those things are true. All of those things are part of it. But also, I think it's worth recognizing with some intentionality that it's not an accident that you are in this place, in this school, surrounded by people who do not know Jesus in the way that you do. And yet it would be a wonderful gift for them to know him and to know the freedom that he offers in the very same way. So the question is, how do we equip our students to be able to meaningfully engage with their schools, with their classes, with their athletic teams? What does it look like for us to equip them? And I think if we get into the nuts and bolts of our student ministry, this is what we see. This is our vision statement, or actually our mission statement for student ministry. It says, we exist to help as many students as possible take their next step in becoming fully devoted and fully delighted followers of Jesus Christ. Now, if you have been around SMCC for any amount of time, you know that this is our mission statement, just replace people with students. Help as many people as possible, help as many students as possible, help as many of those over 20,000 students as possible take their next step. You don't need to jump into the deep end of the pool immediately, but what does it look like to take one next step, to ask a question, to consider things, to read a passage of the Bible, to do those things? What does it look like to help them take that next step towards becoming fully devoted and fully delighted in Jesus? How do we help them get there? And I think the truth is that it's the same for them as it is for any of us, that it's a matter of being equipped within our head, our heart, and our hands. Right? That Jesus invites us to be equipped in those three areas, in our head, and when it comes to understanding the Bible, having some sense of what's in this thing, how to make sense of it, how to think well theologically, how to understand who God is and work through theological questions. When it comes to heart, what does it look like to be able to navigate relationships well, to be able to give and receive love and challenge and encouragement and all of these different things, and even be able to tend to our relationship with God? How do we equip students for that? And when it comes to hands, right, this idea of a commitment to whole life generosity and service, if that's something that we can build into people, build into students from a young age as convictions that this is the best way, the most joyous way, the most meaningful way to live their lives, and we're just setting them up incredibly well for incredibly meaningful and joyous lives. And so the goal is to help our students reach that place. Now, that's the mission, but beyond that, these are some of the nuts and bolts. SMCC student ministry strategy. Environments. Environments are really central to who we are as a church. Part of the reason for this is because we know we can't control people, and we don't try to control people. One of our values is we honor the process in which God changes people from the inside out. And so we trust that God is at work within people's lives. I trust that God's at work within my life in the very same way that I trust that he's at work within your life. And yet we work as hard as we can to make sure our environments are as good as they can possibly be, so that within them people have the opportunity to essentially develop relationships, form community, ask spiritual questions, and grow in their spiritual lives. And so when it comes to this, we've got our Tuesday night midweek for students, which is so much fun and is a wonderful environment for kids 6th grade all the way up through 12th grade, right, where it's sort of tailored specifically to them. When it comes to Sunday mornings, we actually don't have another environment that's set aside for students. And you know, at a certain point in our future, that may be something that changes, maybe something for middle school ministry, but honestly, if I'm to kind of speak from my heart on this particular subject, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for people within that age group to actually be in here in the broader service. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for them to be participating here, because at a certain point, people have to be integrated into the broader life of the church. It has to happen at some point. And so for now, I think this is a wonderful experience for them to see their peers, to see their parents, to see their parents' friends, to see the broader community that they belong to engaging within worship, as they sing the songs, as they pray as part of the community, as they listen to the message, as we grow in our understanding biblically. I think that is good for students to be able to see and to learn to be a part of. And so those are really the primary pieces of it. Beyond that, we've got events that happen. Like, for example, this past Friday night, there was a worship night specifically for the student ministries at the campuses up here in the north, and it was an incredible event, right? A fantastic event to see kids, to see students at that stage of life intentionally gathering together specifically to turn their attention to God and to offer praise and remind themselves of who God is and what that means for them. That is an incredibly powerful thing. And so we have events like that from time to time. And then beyond that, we have our camps, our summer and winter camps that, it's been said that basically 6 months of relational and spiritual growth happens across 3 or 4 days at camps, which is why they're a fantastic investment when it comes to the spiritual lives of our teenagers. And so when it comes to nuts and bolts, that's our mission, and these are the ways that we actually get after helping our students take next steps and equipping them to be able to follow Jesus well in every aspect and area of their lives. All right. Now, as we kind of come close to the end of our time together, I think it's worth acknowledging. I said at the outset, if you haven't seen Wednesday in Outer Banks, then maybe this conversation is not the one that's going to feel the most relevant. By the way, I spoke at like a summer camp, and I was like, I don't know what the young folk are into these days. I don't even know what they're like. So Outer Banks was my cultural research, and now I'm just into it. So I'm like, man, I don't know what's going to happen in the next season. This is so. Just know that those things can happen. But for those of you who are like, do we really need to have this conversation? Do we actually have to set aside one Sunday in the year to talk about this? This is what I would say. 1 Timothy 4:12. Paul, significant author of the New Testament and leader in the early church, he writes this to Timothy, who is a younger pastor in the city of Ephesus, a significant city in the first century in the Roman Empire. And he says this to Timothy. He says, don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. I think this is fascinating that he intentionally goes out of his way in this letter to say, don't let anyone do this. Because I think if that's an indication of anything, it's that our natural tendency is to actually look down on or even to dismiss the lives and the dynamics of the lives of those who are younger than us. And he's saying that it's worth guarding against that tendency and taking the lives of those who are younger, taking the dynamics of their lives, taking the spiritual element of their lives seriously, that this is worth doing. And this isn't the only place that we see that. Even the New Testament letters written by Paul and other leaders, they go out of their way in a countercultural fashion to address not just the men in the household, but to address the entirety of the household. They address even kids, which tells me that in the first century, man, the teenagers were in the service just like everyone else, because that's the way that it was structured when we see through the letters. And so all that to say, I think it's a tendency to dismiss the challenges, to dismiss the dynamics, to dismiss the difficulties, to dismiss the worries and the anxieties, and even the spiritual integrity of the lives of those younger than us. And yet, I think again and again and again, the New Testament cautions us against that tendency. Because again, churches that fail to prioritize youth will fail to have a future. And when we prioritize them, we're investing in our future, and honestly, we're investing in our present. And so maybe the question is, well, what can I do? What does it look like for me to play a role within this? And these are some things that I would say, right? There's just 3 things that I think that give us all an opportunity to play a role within this somewhere, right? So first off, there's prayer. I think prayer is always a significant place to start. So for example, like your community group, what would it look like for your group to basically say, okay, what's the school that's closest to us? and to commit to praying for that school throughout the entirety of this year, or even within your neighborhood, right? What's the closest junior high school or the closest high school, and to commit to praying for that school. Or if you're a student, the school that you go to, or the athletic team that you're a part of, or whatever it is, what would it look like for you to take this year and say, every time I walk through the doors of this school, every time I walk through the doors of this gym, I'm going to pray for my teammates, I'm going to pray for my classmates, I'm going to pray for this place. What would it look like to commit to something like that? My question is, what doors might open that have been previously closed as a result of us as a community committing to prayer like that? And so I think the first place is really prayer. Beyond that, giving, I think, is always worth considering. And here's what I want to say about this. As a community, we have been growing in generosity. And that's something that I find to be incredibly encouraging, that I'm incredibly grateful and thankful, because for us to grow in generosity as a community means so many of us are growing in generosity as individuals. And truth be told, when you give to SMCC, you are investing in the lives of these teenagers. It's one of the many things that money goes to fuel, is the ministry that takes place there. And so essentially what I want you to hear is that if you give to SMCC, if you have been giving, you have been investing within the student ministry. And I'm incredibly thankful for your investment. And so I think that's worth acknowledging. And then the third thing would be serving. And honestly, it's a high ask to serve in the student ministry team, because what it involves is showing up each and every week, each and every Tuesday night, to orchestrate games with these kids, to engage with them through the highs and lows of their lives, to facilitate small group discussions where sometimes all they want to talk about is video games, but other times they want to talk about how their parents had a fight and their dad left, and all of a sudden you need to be ready and engaged in the moment, right? Incredibly light things occur and incredibly heavy things occur. And to be the kind of person who can step in, develop a relationship, and be there for these students through one of the most pivotal seasons of their lives is a remarkable thing. And I think it's also a privilege to be able to serve in that way. You know, in so many ways, it actually is following in the very footsteps of Jesus. And I don't just mean that in his ministry, he invested in teenagers. But if you break down the dynamics of the gospel, one of the things we see is that Jesus intentionally chose to enter into our experience. He left what was comfortable for him and was born a human like one of us, took on our human experience so that he could live the perfect life that you and I never could, and then die on the cross for us. He chose to do that in order to bring about our forgiveness and our redemption. And I think for so many of us to step into student ministry, it's a matter of leaving the environment that we are comfortable with, to step into a context that is perhaps very uncomfortable for us, but to do so that we can engage with those who are absolutely in need of people in their lives who know and love them and who know and love Jesus. And it's an opportunity to do that. When I think of my own life, being a teenager, and one of the things I reflect on is that if there had been one person in my life, whether it was a peer or whether it was an adult, if there had been one person who loved Jesus and who loved me, who knew and loved him and knew and loved me, I think my life and my story through that season of my life could have been dramatically different. And yet for me, there wasn't. There wasn't one person. And the truth is, for perhaps some 20,000 students who spend the majority of their time in buildings less than 10 minutes away from where we are sitting now, the same thing is true of them. And yet, we have the opportunity to be that person. Whether you're an adult serving within the ministry, whether you are a student who is in that school, you have the opportunity to be that person who knows and loves Jesus and who knows and loves them. Because the bottom line is, when we prioritize youth, we prioritize our future. And so I think the question for all of us is, man, what does it look like for us to engage? Would you pray with me? Jesus, we thank you for the time together. We thank you that you were willing to leave the comfort of heaven. We thank you that you were willing to leave your context to step into something that was incredibly uncomfortable. We thank you that you were willing to enter into our experience in order to engage with us, to connect with us, and ultimately to bring about our forgiveness through your sacrifice on the cross, through the offering of your life and the entering into death. And in light of that, we want to take responsibility for our surrounding area. We know it's not an accident that we are here. We're excited about being here. And I think about these schools. I think about the number of students who surround us. I think about the number of people in this valley. And I just ask that you would continue to be at work here in these places in the lives of so many people around us, including us. And that you would invite us into that more and more for our joy, for your glory. And so that we could continue to see lives changed as people are set free and find healing and find joy in you. And would those of us who participate within that not just be those who are in adulthood, but even those who are in an incredibly pivotal season of life in which you are still able to work through them and in them in wonderful ways. And so we thank you and we praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Would you stand and sing this last song with us? Were creation suddenly articulate with 1,000 tongues to lift one cry, then from north to south and east to west, we'd hear Christ be magnified. Were the whole earth echoing his imminence, his name would burst from sea and sky, from rivers to the mountaintops, we'd hear Christ be magnified. Oh, Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me. When every creature finds its inmost melody, and every human heart its native cry, oh, then in wide rapture hymn of praise, we hear Christ be magnified. Christ be magnified. Let his praise arise. Christ be magnified in me. Oh, Christ be magnified from the altar of my life. Christ be magnified in me.
And Lord, it is our prayer that we would have nothing before you, God, that our eyes and our hearts would be focused on you as we lift only your name.
And I won't bow to idols. I'll stand strong and worship you. And if it puts me in the fire, I'll rejoice 'cause you're there too. And I won't be fooled by feelings. I'll hold fast to what is true. And if the cross brings transformation, then I'll be crucifying you.
glorified in your life, that all you do brings honor to Him. We'll see you next Sunday.